You're listening to the Tom Rowland Podcast, part of the Waypoint Outdoor Collective.
You'd be surprised how many campers we have come to us with a lot of behavioral and educational disorders as far as like ADHD and ADD and confidence issues like you're talking about. And when you put them in an environment with something that they love, with other campers that share the same exact values that they've never met before, it is incredible the turnaround that you see. And that's not just in their fishing skills, that's in their communication skills and everything. I mean, we have campers from all over the country who all speak the same fishing language. They've all watched the same YouTube programs. They've all watched your show. They know about everything that's going on. And they're from Colorado. They're from Georgia, New York, a lot of Texas. And they all are talking about the same lures. They're talking about the same videos that they've seen. I mean, it's really interesting and cool to see. My name is Parker Rabow, and this is the Tom Rowland Podcast.
Over the years, I've gotten a lot of questions from parents who have kids that are really into fishing and they want them to have the opportunity to do more fishing. And one of those opportunities seems to be kind of a summer camp kind of a situation. But a lot of parents find that there are plenty of summer camps that offer fishing programs. It's part of the summer camp. So you might ride horses, you might do a little fishing, you might do a little rock climbing, canoeing, all kinds of stuff like you have at typical summer camps. But it was quite a while before I found any sort of a camp type operation that was all about fishing. So I started doing a little research and I found my friend Matt Budd has Jupiter Fishing Academy, which is really cool, and had him on the podcast to learn about his program, which is fantastic. And then I also learned about someone else after that podcast. I had one of the listeners send me an email saying, hey man, you should check out this one. So I tracked it down, checked it out, and it's called Florida Fantasy Fishing Camp. And it's a really cool program. I don't want to spoil it for you because I had a great conversation with Parker Rabow, who is the gentleman who started this camp. Very great story. Started as a project in school, and it has materialized into something much, much bigger and impacting lives all around. One of his most famous alumni is Chaston Whitfield, who also happens to be the first guest ever on this podcast. So thought that was kind of cool. We had a great conversation about all kinds of stuff: college, entrepreneurship, how to get things started, what this camp is like, what it's all about, and certainly how you can get your kids into it if they are so inclined. So, great conversation with Parker Rabow, and check out his stuff. I think you're going to really like it. All right, Parker, I'm glad you're here with us. Thanks for sitting down. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
Yeah, well, I've had so many of my customers, so many of the people that watch the show send me emails. Over the years, people are looking for a way to get their kids into fishing, to have the opportunity. And
Right.
Summer camp seems to be a great opportunity for that. But in my limited research, I haven't come across many places where there's a fishing camp.
Yeah,
I recently did a podcast with Matt Budd, who does the Jupiter Fishing Academy. And that's a pretty cool thing. He kind of does these half days. And I was very interested in that and talking to him to find out what he was doing. But then shortly after that, I came across your stuff and you contacted me too. So I'm super excited to hear about what you have going on.
Yeah, there are a lot of camps around that have fishing as a component, but there are very few that fishing is the main squeeze. And I did look into Matt's program, which is phenomenal. And there's actually a couple others that have popped up around the state in the last couple years. But honestly, the fact that there's not a lot going in the fishing camp world has allowed me and these other guys to grow, because people can find us easiest by simply searching online. There's not a lot in the whole country, so we pop up at the top in some of these searches. So I've been lucky enough to benefit from some of that.
Well, how did this whole thing start?
Well, I was finishing up a graduate degree at University of South Florida here in Tampa, and I was getting a master's in entrepreneurship. We needed to create a business for a small group project, and I grew up fishing, fly fishing, in my backyard here in Tampa, and I felt like I could do a great job teaching and working with kids, and I knew a few captains in the area. So kind of put two and two together, did a little market research. There was nothing like this around. This was 2012. And I just kind of threw this together and put a little business plan together for a school project. And it really wasn't something that was supposed to be a moneymaker or a career. And it kind of exploded under my feet. So,
That's
yeah, it's
awesome.
been one
So,
lucky adventure.
what school was that you went to?
University of South Florida, USF. And that is
Okay,
that
and
is
they
in
have
Tampa.
a really good entrepreneurship
They have a
program. Is that
fantastic they have a fantastic master's in entrepreneurship. So I went to
so? Let me
Florida
ask.
State in Tallahassee, got an undergrad in entrepreneurship, came home, and then I went for a graduate degree after that.
All right. Well, in my world right now, I have 3 kids. I have one that's, 21, he's out in Montana at Montana State. I have,
Awesome.
another one that is, 19, and right this moment, he's in Alaska on a NOLS trip,
Oh my
sea
gosh.
kayaking and backpacking, and then he's going out to the, Montana State in Bozeman as well after spending, a year at Belmont University in Nashville. That one didn't really fit, and then I have a daughter who is going to be a junior next year. So college is something that I'm talking to my kids about a lot. That we already been through the whole college looking process.
Mhm.
One of the things that I hear so often with kids is that they want to go into business or whatever, and they end up going to business school. And this is what happened to my son. He went to business school, and it was so incredibly boring, and it was all about big business and
Right.
things that he never saw himself using. And he eventually changed his major over to something else and then changed it again.
Yeah.
And I want to know about the entrepreneurship program. Like,
Well,
how is entrepreneurship program different? I mean, when I went to college, we didn't have entrepreneurship programs.
it's definitely a new style, and it really, I
Yeah,
think, has to do with and people have a different ways of viewing this word, but the millennials aren't the most they don't want to work to make someone else money. They want to work to make themselves money and successful. So it has been a shift in how students are looking at their life and their career, for better and for worse. There's pros and cons to that. But anyways, these entrepreneurship programs are exploding right now, and I was lucky enough when I was at Florida State in Tallahassee that this program was just starting the year that I had to choose what I was going to do. I think it was sophomore year. And I heard about this entrepreneurship program. It really focuses on idea growth, small business management. So, like you were saying, it doesn't touch on the macroeconomics of a big business and big finance. It's really about seeing opportunities, identifying problems, solving problems, and then somehow creating a business around that.
right.
So in my
That's that.
case, there was nothing going on for kids who love to fish, who live in a town where fishing is all over the place. So I kind of solved a need that I saw, which is one example.
How often do you think it is that someone in their project creates a career or at best a career,
Right.
at least a lifestyle, kind of a hobby, kind of a thing that could
Exactly.
do something. In your case, it's turning into a career. How often do you think that's happening
I
in
don't
in an
think it needs
entrepreneurship
to
program?
happen more. It definitely not enough. In the group, in the friends that I made over the course of my studies in my graduate program, I would say that, including myself, maybe 3 or 4 students out of a group of 40 made it a career and a viable business. So they need it. I mean, it's just, and honestly, people could have created a business on their second and third try. A lot of people, it doesn't work on their first try, which is normal and good. People can learn a lot from failure.
I mean, that's
So,
kind of entrepreneurship right there. Like, I mean,
exactly. You
you
have to
kind of start
embrace
up
the
and
risk for sure. For sure. And they teach that and they go over that and they talk about how failing is a good thing. You're supposed to fail. That's where you learn the most. You don't learn the most when you succeed on your first swing, you know?
mhm.
So
It's more
that's a big
convenient
component.
and more comfortable.
Yeah, for sure.
So when they're kind of outlining, I mean, I'm assuming this is like your senior project that this camp came from, like, or your
Yeah,
thesis basically,
this
or
is
like,
yeah, well, yeah, it's in your last year. So,
okay.
which isn't considered
So
your senior year, I don't think.
when
Right.
they assign this to you, like, what are the parameters that they're looking for? I mean, I guess you could kind of you're kind of coming up with a fictional
Yep,
business that kind of. So, what are the
exactly.
parameters that
They
they're
want you
asking you to?
they want you to outline a 5-year model with a optimistic, a pessimistic, and something in the middle financial plan for how it could look in 5 years. And as a part of that, they want a business plan, which has a ton of components that we don't need to go into, like SWOT analysis and market research and stuff like that. And then they want you to go out and find businesses that align kind of with what you're doing. So I contacted a couple bigger fishing companies in our area. The offshore fishing business is a little bit more put together. So I contacted a company called Hubbard's Marina. They run party boats and smaller charter boats, and I kind of work with them and align just to get some industry standards because there is no real industry standard for a fishing summer camp. So they want you to put things together like that and then present to a board of professors as a thesis at the end of the semester.
And so, when you did all this research, did you have any other ideas, or was this the first one that you had?
This was the first one. So I like I said,
Okay,
I just got lucky.
but I would
Tampa
imagine that some
has
of your I would imagine that some of your classmates are kinda coming up with, "Okay, well, what about a car wash or something like that?" And it's like, "Okay, well, there's
oh, there was some
500 car
very
washes
interesting
here."
ideas. There was a lot of medical device stuff going on. And that's what they were honestly pushing for tangible products versus a service-based industry or service-based business. But I came up with this and it just seemed to work. Tampa has a unique the stars kind of align here for this kind of business. There is proximity to fantastic fishing. There are a ton of families, which is not the norm in Florida. And then there is a lot of growth and money in Tampa to, for people to have the income to do this kind of thing. So there's a lot of places in Florida that have great fishing and the financial means, but there's not the families, there's not the kids, there's not the number of kids there. So Tampa is a unique situation.
So, when you're kind of getting the go ahead, like, you have to present this to all that board of professors, and then
Yep.
they tell you, "Okay, this meets all the parameters. That's a good subject for your project." Is that how it works? And then
Kind
you're
of.
off and running, you have
Nobody
to
was
kinda create
very
this?
yes. And when I presented the idea, there wasn't a lot of wows or great idea going on. I don't know. In the academia world, I guess fishing and guiding, they don't. It's just such a foreign entity that people know, just don't know enough about it to really
Yeah, well,
respect the
I
industry.
mean, I would not worry about what those people thought about anything
Exactly.
at all, but
Right.
the fact that they say, "Okay, well, this is kind of meets all checks all the boxes, right? So go ahead and this can be your project." And then what I'm curious about is, like, once you get the go ahead to do that as your project, at what point did you kinda go, "You know what? This isn't a fictional business. This could actually work."
Right. Right. Well, once I reached out to some potential customers, and my customer is really the parents. And I had some mutual friends of my parents, actually, who I reached out to just to get their thoughts on the idea. And they asked when I was going to run it. I mean, they were ready to go right then and there. So that was kind of the light bulb moment for me. And I actually, during this semester, I had my summer free. I wasn't They didn't offer classes during the summer. So I really everything was just pushing me in the direction of, let's try to run this and see what happens. And there was another component, is that I didn't need to put a lot of capital into the business to start it. I contacted and contracted with a local marina. I reached out to a few local guides who I knew, who I liked, and who I trusted, and who had families and they were full time. And if it ran, I paid everybody. And if it didn't run, no skin. So it was really a low risk situation in year one. And that's kind of the beginning of it all. So,
Yeah. And so, how many years have you been doing this?
we are entering our seventh summer. So
Wow.
so it's been, and honestly, the first year we had, I think, 28 campers, 28
So,
fishermen, and
28 in one session, or 28
no,
through the whole
that was
summer?
divided by two. I just did 2 weeks. So
Okay.
every session, as far as my fishing camp goes, is a 5-day Monday through Friday session for a day camp. We've now expanded to overnights, which we can get into a little bit later. But yeah, we started with 28 campers in 2012, and I just registered my 495th camper a couple days ago for this summer. So
Wow.
it's
So
crazy.
you have 495 kids coming this summer?
This summer with 250 on waiting lists, because I've been
Wow.
full since March.
So,
Yeah,
okay, so at this point, what's the bottleneck? Like,
the
how
bottleneck,
could
that's a great question. The bottleneck, honestly, is the locations.
Okay. And
Yeah,
well, let's talk about that. Like, what does it look like? Like, are these people, I noticed, like, on your website, it says that you have overnight camps, you got day camps, you've got a scuba camp, you've got all these different things. What does this look like? Let's just take the day
Yeah.
camp first of
Yeah, yeah,
all.
yeah. So the day camps, like I mentioned, are week-long sessions. So every Monday, a new group of campers come to the marina. They're signed up online. I have pre-organized them into fishing teams of 4 campers, and they are assigned a professional captain that they're going to fish with all week. A lot of times they know campers in camp, and on the registration form, they've requested to fish with their buddies. A lot of times they don't know anybody, so I organize the boats by age. That day camp is ages 7 to 14. So there'll be a boat of 7, 8-year-olds, there'll be a boat of 11, 12-year-olds, and so on. And they fish a 4-hour trip every day with the same captain, so they can build camaraderie and teamwork on the boat. And then after lunch every day, the captains will stick around and we'll do a fishing related skill activity. So we'll do knot tying one day, target casting, how to throw a cast net. We get the Florida Fish and Wildlife involved, and on Fridays, they come and give a talk on boater safety and conservation.
Wow.
So that's kind of the inshore camp. We do the same thing for offshore fishing. Because of the funny red snapper laws in our state, I'm not able to run as many offshore camps as I want. Um, but that's a whole nother can of worms. And as far as the overnight sessions go, that was about 4 years ago that we started those. And that's when the camp really started taking off, because now kids can come from all over the country and even the world to fly into Tampa to fish with us. So I wasn't limited to just, local campers.
Right. So where will these people stay on the overnight trip? Like, what are the
So
accommodations
the
like?
day camps are at marinas. So there's a local marina. Hula Bay Club is the restaurant and marina in South Tampa. Hubbard's Marina is the offshore day camp. The overnight where we stay, actually, the university that I completed my graduate studies, USF, has a St. Petersburg based satellite campus, which is on the water with a full marina. So I was able to work with them, and going to that program definitely helped. And they have a dormitory on campus that is not utilized during the summer. So on the bottom
God,
floor,
that's
I know
awesome.
it is awesome. And if you saw the place, it is like a country club of a small university. I mean, it's beautiful.
And
It sells
are you
itself.
able to use the dining hall and
Yeah,
that
for
kind of?
sure. Yeah, so the first floor of this dormitory of the residence hall has a full cafeteria with all kinds of stations: pasta station, entree station, salad bar, grill I mean, it's crazy. And they wake up, have breakfast. We do room inspections, and they're going down to the docks. The captains are all waiting for them. And it works very similar to the day camp, like I described, except it's just a lot more fishing, a lot more activities.
Man, and so what? How many do you limit that to? The
That that
overnight camp.
camp that camp is 32 campers a session, while the day camps are 24 campers a session. So we were talking about bottlenecks, the, and I take back what I said. The bottleneck is the location. The bottleneck really is quality, and I am nervous to expand too quickly and not give every single camper the quality experience that I value. So that's really my main problem, is growing too quickly. I don't want to do that. I really focus on everybody catching a ton of fish, learning a ton, and having a great time. We have a 80 to 90% return rate, which is something that I think is way more important than my bottom line. So that's
Wow.
really my main stick is sticking with the level of quality without growing too fast.
Yeah. So what about I mean it sounds so much like these kids are just, completely um submersed in fishing knowledge
They
throughout
are.
the week. Like, have you had some kids that you see like some real turnaround? I mean, I would imagine that this camp would also really help some kids' confidence. Like,
For sure.
it,
And you'd be surprised how many campers we have come to us with a lot of behavioral and educational disorders, as far as like ADHD and ADD and confidence issues like you're talking about. And when you put them in an environment with something that they love, with other campers that share the same exact values that they've never met before, it is incredible the turnaround that you see. And that's
wow.
not just in their fishing skills, that's in their communication skills and everything. I mean, we have campers from all over the country who all speak the same fishing language. They've all watched the same YouTube programs. They've all watched your show. They know about the everything that's going on, and they're from Colorado. They're from Georgia, New York, a lot of Texas, and they all are talking about the same lures. They're talking about the same videos that they've seen. I mean, it's really interesting and cool to see.
That's cool. So
Yeah,
I'm sure I want to know about the evolution of this. Like when, you're talking about kids that are from 7 to 14 in the day camp, right? Is that what
right.
the age was? So
Yeah,
like in raising 3 kids of my own, and then when I started, taking them fishing, I really liked it. Like, I thought, "Okay, this is really cool. I'm getting to do all kinds of different things. I'm getting to, put the fly rod down for a little while on the tarpon and maybe
that's
go up
tough to
against the
do.
mangroves," and yeah, I mean, sometimes, but when you're doing it, from January all the way through,
Yeah, that's true.
July without taking a single day off, I mean, it's kinda nice to do something else for a change. And so I would take my kids and we'd go snapper fishing. We'd go up against the mangroves. We'd do some shark fishing. We do all this different stuff, the nearshore patch reefs and all this stuff. And it opened up a whole new world to me. But one of the things that I really noticed with them, especially with when they were younger than 7, but even at 7, like, you have to keep the rod bent, and
Oh yeah.
you have to kind of select species that are, good for that particular young child at that time of their fishing career, that
Mm-hmm.
it's not too difficult, it's not too, it doesn't take too much patience, there's gonna be some good action. How are you kind of selecting what you're fishing for?
So the guides will they do a fantastic job, and honestly, the success of the camp really falls on the group of captains that we have, and they are phenomenal. And they can suss out exactly who they're fishing with on day one on Monday. So a lot of the guides will start the charter each morning with mackerel fishing. And mackerel fishing in Tampa Bay in the summertime is phenomenal. And it's exactly what you're describing. It's like nonstop action. You can see activity on the surface. You can see splashes and long runs. They have teeth. They get big. They can be chummed up right behind the boat. So it really checks a lot of boxes, especially when they're fishing with younger campers.
Right.
And then some
And
of the
then
older campers that have seen shows and they know the value of a quality stuff, then they start going over to the mangroves. They start doing a little snook and red fishing.
what about how does it look offshore when you're out there?
The offshore fishing is the same in that they can go to certain spots and they can do red grouper and gray snapper and porgies, and they can get very consistent bites. And then what they'll do, they might keep a bonita and they might do a day where it's a lot slower fishing and they'll go after Goliath grouper, and they might get 2 or 3 bites that day, but they're big bites. So there's
Yeah.
definitely two sides of that. So yeah, offshore is not as easy to implement as inshore. Inshore, they can do both in the same day. They can do a lot of mackerel fishing and get a lot of activity going, and then they can go after and try to get a big snook in the afternoon.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. How much do you think you're talking to the kids, or I don't know, is this even a thing that you talk about, like trash fish versus trophy fish, or I mean, in my opinion, there is no trash
They
fish.
come with a lot. I agree. I mean, my favorite fish are mackerel and ladyfish
Yeah,
because
they bite.
they bite and that is what they love. They come to camp with a lot of preconceived notions. So, and we can eliminate a lot of those by celebrating and photographing every single fish that they catch. Every captain has to take a picture of every single fish, and we release 100% of our fish. I don't allow any keep your catch. It's all photo release.
And
And
what happens to those photos during the week?
so that's a great question because on Friday we have a comprehensive award ceremony where we go through like 80 slides of the top fish and the top funny photos of that week. So there is definitely a biggest catfish, biggest ladyfish, biggest jack crevalle, along with snook, redfish, trout, mackerel, snapper, sharks, tarpon, everything else. So, and everybody's getting an award. There's a lot of laughs. We celebrate the small fish. Just for biggest snook, there's also smallest snook. So definitely, yeah, it's definitely funny, and it really does just make sure that everybody is getting value from everything that they've caught and everything that they've learned.
Yeah, that's super important, especially to start people like that. I mean, it's one thing to kind of grow into something, but it's another to start your fishing career thinking that one fish is better than another, and
Right.
catching that fish is a waste of time when it all builds. Like, you just
Oh,
don't
they
go out and catch a blue marlin because that's what you want to catch. I mean, in
exactly.
my opinion, someone's fishing career, however in depth that needs to go. I mean,
Hmm.
basically should start with a cricket and a bobber and move your way up to whatever it is, fly fishing for permit or fly fishing for marlin,
Right.
or things that are even more difficult than that. And
Right.
I don't know. I think that that's a great approach. What you have going on is,
Yeah. I mean, we've been lucky in that once, if they had a preconceived notion about a catfish, once they're fighting a big one for a few minutes, it could be anything, and they're having a great time doing it. So you can just see that evolution. And especially when you're fishing with other kids right by you and everyone's like cheering you on and wondering what you have and kind of the excitement and curiosity about the whole thing. It's really, really cool to see. And you can see it in their faces in every photo.
yeah, that's awesome. So what do you think, like at this point, where does this, well, we hadn't even talked about the scuba camp. So you have another camp that's a scuba camp as well?
Yeah, so there is a scuba program that's limited to 6 campers, and that age is 10 to 15. Patty requires that you are at least 10 years old to get your junior open water certificate. And that camp requires a lot of homework before camp even begins, but it runs the same style as the other ones. It's Monday through Friday, and they're doing 3 pool dives, a lake spring-fed lake dive, and a drift river dive. And on Friday, they take their final exam and they're issued a temporary license, and then their real license will be mailed to them in a couple weeks. So that one,
Wow.
yeah, that one is a very small camp. It's very boutiquey, and it's very popular. It's just campers can only do it one time. It's to get your license, and once you have it, the camp, doesn't really do much for you. But that
Yeah.
one's a really
Well,
cool one, and to see the underwater photos of them learning and smiling and doing buddy breathing and all the stuff that they have to do to get certified is really cool.
that's cool. So at what point did you decide to expand from I mean, we talked about it a little bit that you went from the day camp to the overnight, and that was kind of a
Right.
big thing. But then you went from those two to include the scuba, I guess, at
Right.
some
Well, I'm
point.
trying to diversify a little bit and stay within the marine world. But a couple of years ago, I have a guy who actually certified me when I was 12 years old, right down the street. We were talking about potentially putting a program together, and we've been doing it for 3 years now, and it's been great. It's just honestly, it was a way to diversify the camp a little bit and reach campers that may not have found us otherwise. And I do have a lot of crossover business between the scuba camp and the fishing camp, or the fishing camp to the scuba camp.
So,
So
do you have kids that are coming from out of town that are doing like a couple of weeks and then doing the scuba camp? I mean, like,
yeah, so we have a lot of mixed situations. A lot of parents will come to Florida and vacation and send their child to camp during that week, and that allows them to do the day camps like the scuba and the inshore day camp. And then we have some campers that their parents will send them here from somewhere far away, and they'll stay for a month. So you don't have
wow.
to do, if there's consecutive overnight weeks, you can stay for as many as are consecutive. So in our case, that's 4.
Wow, that's awesome. So
Yeah.
now you've been doing this for 7 years. Have you had some kids that have continued on in the fishing or that you're maintaining contact with that are now
Yeah,
too old for
for
your
sure.
camp?
So a lot of campers have come back as counselors, which is always awesome.
Oh,
Um,
that's awesome.
yeah, that's been really cool to see somebody at 10 years old, come back as a 16 and 17-year-old and be a junior counselor and help out is so rewarding to see. We also have another camper, Chaston Whitfield, who has become kind of a female fishing personality, and she
I
is.
I'm well aware of Chasten. She was
Oh,
on our
okay, yeah,
show
she did the camp
she was
a long time
also
ago.
she has the distinct honor, or maybe I think of it as a distinct honor. She might think of it as something else, but she was the first guest on this podcast. She's the
Really,
first
I did
one.
not know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
That's
I started the
awesome.
podcast with Chasten, and she came down to do the show. We did a saltwater experience episode. She
I
taught
think I've
permit
seen.
and
I had
stuff.
definitely seen the show. I didn't know about the podcast. That's
Well,
phenomenal.
that night I was just, it's not like so many things, probably like this camp for you or so many other things for so many other people. I thought about doing a podcast for the longest time. I Then it was like, well, I don't know what kind of equipment to get, and then you're hemming and hawing. Finally, it's like I'm just buying the stuff. Right or wrong, I'm just going to buy it. We got
Yep.
this trip coming up. We're gonna have. I had Chasten come down. I had Will Taylor come down. And I thought, okay, well, these are, we'll film the show and then we'll do the podcast after. And still, her podcast is one of my favorites that I've ever done. She's doing great and has continued on to college
Oh,
fishing. I'm
yeah.
following her now.
That's. I mean, she is a awesome story to follow. And I met her 6 or 7 years ago. She fished the camp a couple years in a row. They're from a little bit south of Tampa, so it was a trek for them to come. But they came and they brought friends, and they had an all girl boat
That's
during
awesome.
camp, and that was like in my first year one or year two. So it's really cool to see her develop as a successful angler, and do what she's done. She raises all kinds of money for kids in need, and that whole area. So it's really cool to see.
Yeah. And any other stories like that? Like somebody that has come back as a counselor or I don't know. It
I mean,
seemed,
as far, yeah, nothing. Chasten's definitely going to win that battle for sure. But I've had a lot of campers who have come back, and they have made a connection with the guide that they met at camp, and they have gone on to be that guide's like mate during their tarpon season. A lot of the inshore captains in Tampa don't utilize, first mates or help on the boat, but during their tarpon season, which is kind of coincides just before our summer camp season starts, a lot of these guides are doing their tarpon stuff, and I have a lot of campers who are working with them during tarpon season, which is probably one of the top jobs for a 15-year-old that I could think of.
gosh.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, for sure. And you learn a
I mean,
ton by being out on the water at 4 a.m. and picking up clients at 8 a.m. and fishing for 8 hours,
yeah, you might learn that you don't wanna be a fishing guide when you grow up.
Yeah, for sure. That's one thing.
I mean, that's a good way to do it because a lot of people become a fishing guide and then do that, and they're like, "Oh, damn."
Yeah, no, no.
Like, I
Definitely the
did
right way
I
to do it is to try it out first.
yeah. I talked to this one girl recently, and she had gone all the way through nursing school, completely through, and had the greatest grades, like top of her class. Then she gets her job in nursing, and she doesn't like it.
Wow.
And I was like, it's like, well, so I
Sweet.
I once was talking to
All
this young
right.
lady who went to nursing school, and she graduated
Yeah.
at the top of her class. She was remarkably smart, and she gets out of nursing school, gets her first job, and she hates it. And I was like, "So why? Like, how does that happen? Did you not try it before,
Yeah.
as a summer, like, deal to follow somebody around to shadow for a day to," and no, she had just never done anything like that, and then launches into a career.
And that sounds, yeah. Well, it sounds so familiar to fishing guides because it sounds so
Yeah.
sexy looking from afar, and then they dive in and it's not what they thought it was going to be. So she definitely fell into that same situation.
Well, we've talked about it so many times on this podcast about the difference between being a guide and being someone who loves to fish. And there's a
Right.
really big difference, and it's probably something that you should talk to your students about and your campers about because like everything that you're doing is leading them to a career in the outdoors or at least to understand that that's something that could be possible, which in my case, I didn't know that. I never was around a
Right.
fishing guide growing up, and so it was completely new to me. But one of the things that might be an interesting conversation is to say to your campers, like, there's a really big difference between being a fisherman and being a guide. And if you love to fish, being a guide means
Yeah,
that you don't get to do what you want to do anymore. Like,
exactly. You watch people do it. I mean, it's an outdoor, it's a professional teacher versus a angler. So that is definitely a difference that is not outlined enough.
right.
And a lot of kids and everybody, I mean, kids and adults alike, they view being a fishing guide as being the top angler, but it's really being the top teacher and the top instructor. That is a great
That
idea
couldn't have been
to
said
mention.
better. I mean, like, and not only just a top teacher and a top instructor, a top communicator. And a top communicator means, when I look at guides, good guides and great guides, one of the things that stands out is their ability to communicate before the trip even starts. And that's probably something that
Exactly.
you have become much, much better at in the last 7 years of talking to these kids, talking about their expectations. And that's something that I wanted to talk to you about a little bit is like when you're
Yeah.
saying that people come with all kinds of expectations or different opinions of what a good fish is or not a good fish or what they want to do or
Right.
not want to do. As a fishing guide, the great guides are the ones that can really, first of all, they're not desperate because they got plenty of business and they can say to somebody, what you're asking me to do is not really what I do that much. And I want to kind of introduce you to my friend who that's what he does. Like if somebody says, I want to go shark fishing right in the middle of tarpon season, and this guy only fly fishes for tarpon. Well, if you're desperate, you have to take that shark trip and you don't want to take that shark trip,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
that's not what you want to be doing. So that doesn't turn out to be a good day for the client, doesn't turn out to be a good day for the guide. But if there may be another guide that's their bread and butter. That's what they want to do. They couldn't be happier.
Exactly.
And so to communicate,
And referring that business, yeah, exactly. And referring that business is going to do wonders for you moving forward because it's going to make you look better. Even though you're not making money in the short term with that trip, you're going to gain in the long term with people, liking the decisions that you made and appreciating your
right.
honesty.
And then that other guide is going to get the fly fishing guy that he doesn't really want to take. He's not set up for it, and he's going to send it back your way. So, that not being
Right,
desperate is one
exactly.
thing, but also to discuss like what are you hoping to accomplish on this trip? I want to catch a bonefish on fly. Okay, well, maybe don't come in December. I mean, it could
Right.
happen, but there's way better months, and let's talk about what that looks like. And if you come in December, we might be catching Jack Crevalles and barracudas and mackerels and stuff like that. Is that something that you're interested in? If they're
Right.
not, then I mean, some of these people call and they just have some time in December, but they also have some time in, May and they want to catch a tarpon. But
Right.
if you don't ask them, like, okay, well, if you're really looking for tarpon, like this is kind of the time of the year, and they say, "Oh, okay,
Right.
I can do that. Yeah, sure." Sometimes it's just that easy.
Yeah. And managing expectations on day one is critical. And it's funny that I have a ton of all the captains in the camp are phenomenal and they all do different things as their bread and butter. But the best guides are not the best fishermen. The best guides are the best communicators. They all catch fish, they all put up awesome numbers and quality and quantity. But the best fisherman does not always mean the best guide. And a lot of times it's not. So it was very interesting for me to see that over the years, and it took me a long time to figure that out. But the best guides are the best communicators for
So,
sure.
how are you doing managing expectations when you're fielding all these phone calls? I'm imagining like this camp is probably a year-round job for the most part. I mean, you have to fill it through
It
for the
is.
rest of the year, and then you have to run it during the season.
Oh yeah, the back office work takes months before the actual camp. Goes for three
Right.
months.
So when you're
So
fielding these calls and emails and stuff like that, like how are you managing the expectations of the campers, of the parents, of trying to say, you know what, it's fishing. We could have bad weather. Um,
yep.
like
Oh yeah. It's a slippery slope for sure. And like we talked about, the ladyfish and the mackerel bites are very consistent, and I can lean on those. But everything like everybody knows, is weather dependent, and it is fishing. It's not guaranteed catching. But one thing that I can say is that when there is a camper or two who have not caught something noteworthy, everybody has to catch fish. And that is something that we work very hard to do. And usually 99% of the time, every boat's putting tons of fish in the boat every day. If there is an issue, all the captains and all the campers rally around that issue to put that person on fish. And it's really cool. We have group chats and group discussions. If that situation is approaching and it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, everyone kind of rallies around, and the captains will share notes, share bait, share information, and they will make it happen for that group of kids.
That's cool.
So yeah, it is cool. And having a bunch of guides picking up and fishing generally the same area for the whole week, it really, that amount of information and time on the water really makes it easy for someone to help someone else out in that situation.
Mm-hmm. So that's
So
that's really cool, because the team aspect, and you're kind of eliminating a lot of the I mean, it sounds like you kind of keep a little bit of the competition. People want to win the biggest award, for want to win the biggest
yeah,
snook or
for
whatever.
sure.
But then there's this underlying theme of, look, it's important that everybody has a good time, because again, that's where, if these kids go into a career in outfitting or guiding, that's the most important. It's not about who catches the biggest. It's about, did everyone have a good time?
Right.
Was everyone safe? Did everyone return to the dock and want to do this again tomorrow? That's the most important thing.
Exactly.
And, instilling that in a young age with these kids is super incredibly cool,
Hmm.
what you're doing.
We try to we try to keep some of the competition on the camper level, but zero competition on the guide level. And as I'm sure you know and seen, there is
Oh,
competition going on in
there's,
the industry.
believe me, you can eliminate the competition between those guides, but there is competition between those guides.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. For sure. For sure. So they're all. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they are all on the same team, and I only bring in new captains, and there is no shortage of captains in our area. Which I mean, and that's everywhere. And I really only bring in referrals, captains that are friends and are full time and have families of their own and have been running their guiding business for 20 plus years. And they've got to be in the circle with the current group, because the last thing that I want is any kind of competition, getting ramped up a little too high in the camp. So that's something. I mean, it's something that I have to juggle, is the talents that I have. You have to manage all of these
Yeah. I would think
personalities.
also
I've been
I would
lucky
think
in
also
that.
that a big critical piece of that is that the captain actually wants to do this and is excited about it, because you could have 400 world records and be the best fisherman and guide there's ever been in the world, and the last thing you want to do is hang around with a bunch of kids. That's not going to
Exactly.
be a good addition to the camp.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, and I mean there is a lot during, like I said, this camp falls after, like just after our big migratory tarpon push. So a lot of these guides have done that, and this is kind of their something fun to do after a stressful tarpon season. So I again just really lucky in how it fell together. But yeah, these guides are very, very excited, to change it up for a couple weeks when they
Yeah,
fish with
that's cool.
us.
So at 7 years, you're at the 7 year mark. Obviously, some things have
Hmm.
had to happen to where, you see obviously some potential in being able to make a living, some potential in being able to grow this. But I would imagine that you've also had some situations that are quite rewarding. Um, and that's what I'm interested in now. Like, what happens that you kind of like this so much that you want to continue down this road?
Wow. I mean, there's a lot of things that are rewarding about the whole thing. I mean, honestly, and I have gotten to the point where I am not at every single camp every single day. I'm, moving amongst 3 or 4 sessions a week. So I don't get to see everything like I used to. And I really, that's one of the most rewarding parts of the business is when all the campers are getting off the boat onto the dock and walking up the dock to the restaurant, to the marina, and just the smiles on their faces, and to be able to go down and be the first contact on mainland and give them a high five and ask how they did that day. That by far, I think, is the most rewarding part, because that's the most. They can't wait to tell you. They can't wait to tell you what happened, what they saw. They saw a dolphin like eat a mullet, and then they caught a redfish right after that. I can't believe it. I mean, there's stories. Everyone's got stories, just like we do now. I mean, I was sharing tarpon stories with a buddy on the water yesterday. They do the same exact thing at 10 years old. So that is one of the most rewarding parts.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. It just seems like such a
So
cool thing. I don't know how this has not been on my radar for 7 years, because I swear I've had so many people ask.
I'm not the so I, I'm not the marketing genius that I
Well,
need
I
to
mean,
be,
if you
but
have a 250 person waiting list, it sounds like, what more
yeah,
marketing is needed. I mean, I guess you obviously want it to get out there to as many people as possible, and that let as many people have the opportunity
exactly,
to go to this camp. But,
for
at the
sure.
same time, there seems to be some sort of a bottleneck. It would almost seem like you could eliminate the bottleneck by franchising it out, or spreading it over to another coast. But there seems to be.
Yep, I've dabbled in that a little bit, but maybe I'm not as risk averse, or maybe I'm more risk averse than I claim to
Well,
be.
you never know, man. Somebody
But
might listen to this podcast and say, "You know what? I'm retired, and this is my life's mission as well, and I want to be a part of this." And let's.
I am more than open to that kind of situation. And there are other areas in the state that I think would be phenomenal, for this kind of model.
What do you think
But I
what do
was
you? I
just
mean, we talked about it a little bit, but what do you think the recipe is for the right area?
The recipe for the right area would be proximity to good fishing. And honestly, I don't claim to know every style of fishing around the whole state. But in South Florida, off of like Palm Beach, the proximity there in the inshore fishery is just not what it is in the Keys or the West Coast. I mean, their topography is deeper water, jetties, and stuff like that. So that might not fit an inshore camp style. And I know that people are going to, have arguments against that, which is fine. And I'm admitting to not know, all the opportunities there. But somewhere like a St. Augustine or Jacksonville, that might have proximity to good inshore fishing and a lot of families. There's excellent inshore fishing in the Everglades and in Naples, but I don't think that they have the family like population density to really blow it out of the
Hmm.
water. Um, so the three factors are proximity to fishing, families that live in that area, and families with the financial stability to send their camper to a camp
Yeah, and
like
I guess
this.
you also have to, then the final piece is what you have so nicely in the accommodations and the marinas.
Oh yeah, well that's obvious. Yes, yeah, that is the fourth part. You're absolutely right. Is finding a great, clean, professional, large marina with food and lunch capabilities, and that's not even to mention an overnight camp, which would require even more on the water residence hall and stuff like that. So there are a lot of factors, but it's definitely not impossible. And Tampa is not the end all be all.
Yeah, but it's a great place
It's
for
just a
you
big
it's
town
a
on the
great place
water.
for you to start, because you're deeply ingrained in the community. You know a lot of people. You're able to utilize the university there.
Right.
Like, that's a perfect place for you to start. And I mean, man, I really hope that you move this out to a bigger a bigger
It's gotta be.
audience.
It's
I
gotta
really
go.
do,
Yeah,
because I think
for
it's one of
sure.
the coolest
For sure.
opportunities. And, I mean, I had some emails earlier. We have this email address for the podcast at saltwaterexperience.com, and people often write in and tell me guests that they would like to hear or have questions. And the start of this was someone asking a question about summer camps for kids that had fishing, and just like we talked about, like, not
Right.
just have fishing and you're going to canoe one day and fish the next day, do archery the next day, ride horses the next day. Lots of camps have that, but where can you go to have a full-on summer camp fishing experience? And I didn't know. And in doing just a little bit of research, I remembered Matt having his camp, the
Mhm.
Jupiter Fishing Academy, great opportunity for kids, but he doesn't have the overnight opportunity there like you do. And then this thing comes up.
Right.
I'm just super excited to know that there are some of these, and I'm hoping that after people hear this podcast, they're like, oh no, there's another one in Colorado. You can do this, or you can do this one over
Yeah.
here.
I've heard of some good ones in Texas. There's a good one for, like, older teenagers in Canada, and 'cause I get to see campers that are coming to my program and then going on to another one, like taking a flight to Canada from Tampa after. So I have heard of a couple. I don't have the connections, like, and I haven't met those people that run those programs, but there are a few scattered around the country, that focus on what we're trying to do, and that's get kids outside, and they'll catch a fish or two, and they'll be hooked for life, just
Yeah.
like we
So
are.
do you go to ICAST?
I do not. I am forbidden from ICAST because that's smack dab in the middle of my
Right.
summer
Well,
programs. And I've wanted to go forever. And I should break away for a
yeah,
day or
you could
two.
certainly meet a lot of people,
I've
but I'd
just
be willing to introduce you to a lot of the partners that we have.
I would really appreciate that, and I might take you up on that. If it's not this summer, it'll be next summer. It's
Well, I
in
mean,
the second
yeah,
week
I
of
think so. I mean, we
July.
wouldn't necessarily need to have to do it at ICAST, but there's a lot of companies that understand that youth fishing is the future of the entire industry, and I'm sure that there's lots of people that would like to get
Hmm.
involved, and just like me, like, I'm someone that has kids, and because I have kids, other people that have kids kind of ask me questions about kids and stuff, and I didn't
Yeah,
even know about your program. So the chances are that there's lots of people out there that are
they
saying we need more
of
youth
course.
programs, and they don't even know that yours exists. So hopefully this podcast will be good
Exactly.
for that. But
It will
happy to
be.
introduce you to some other people, and then you should leverage Chasten Whitfield as your ambassador for your camp.
I have, and yes, she is great.
Yeah, she's good like that. She's good like that.
Yeah, that is a great
Yeah, well,
connection
I
to have,
like I
I
like
agree.
her the story of her going to your camp because, I know her family well now, and we did that show, and both her parents came down to make sure that everything was above board, and we invited them down to, like, yeah, you all
Yeah,
need
yeah,
to
yeah, of
come.
course.
And so they all stayed at Hawks Cay, and I got to know, her mom and her dad and her little brother, and then we did the Yellowfin Owners Tournament together, and her little brother, God, I believe he got a slam. I know he caught a big permit down there, and that was super cool.
Yeah, he is a good fisherman in his
Yeah,
own right.
yeah, he is. But
Yeah.
for someone like Chasten to go to your camp, that's saying a lot because, of course, she's very accomplished now, and she's, not only accomplished in freshwater and saltwater, but even back when she was that young, she was still had an opportunity to fish with her mom, who's probably, sorry, man, but
Yep.
she might be a better fit. She's probably a better fisherman than her dad. And I hope,
Oh, yeah.
I hope we're still friends.
Well, she's definitely learned everything she knows from him and then grown
Well, let
even
me tell you,
more.
man, her
So,
mom is a great fisherman. She is a great fisherman.
they all are.
But
They
but
all
for
are.
for her to be able to go to that camp and have a good time, even having the
Yep.
opportunity to
Well,
walk out her back door and go fishing basically anytime she wants, and she's still coming to your camp and having a good time, I think that speaks volumes for, like, what the camp is all about, and the fact that
exactly. And I've had that same
yeah, and the
thought.
fact that kids, you know, sometimes, like, it's fun to go fishing with your parents and all that, but it's also really fun to go fishing with people your own age.
Exactly. And that's really, she was lucky enough to bring one or two friends. And I think that was the main draw at an early age is, fishing, like you said, without your parents, fishing with your friends, and learning on the way, but really just having a great time and being able to relax. And you're in an environment with a fresh captain who's teaching you new ideas. You're in a slightly different area where you don't fish, and you get to fish with your best
Yeah,
friends.
that's super cool. So how
So
much
yeah,
of kind of
yeah.
what you guys talk about is associated with just having a good time?
It's a lot that without mentioning having a good
Yeah.
time. I mean, that just comes when, when you guys want to focus on everybody on the boat being able to, catch fish, everyone on the boat jumping in for funny photos while someone's holding a fish, everyone's making faces behind them, focusing on boater safety and safety equipment, all that stuff ties into, this is for fun. This is not something that is going to be super serious. You don't need to tiptoe along the boat and crouch down when a school of redfish is approaching. They just need to just have a good time. And honestly, when you're laid back and that's the style of fishing that you're embracing, you catch more fish just by being, calm and collected. That makes it so much more fun and impactful.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Well, I'll tell you what,
So
I'm really happy to know about this program. I'll definitely put a link on the website and in the show notes and stuff like that, because there are a lot of people out there that want to do it. Maybe this summer's a little bit too late, but you could plan for next summer.
for sure, I really appreciate all the opportunities and connections. The 2020 summer dates will be published in September of this year.
Okay. So how
So
does
right after the
everybody,
summer.
how would, if somebody's got a kid that wants to possibly attend this camp, or they want more information, or sponsors want to get involved, what's the
Yeah.
process?
So the process really is easiest online at fantasyfishingcamp.com. There's registration buttons on that site. There's also a schedule page, and you can register right now. People are registering for waiting lists, but come September, like I mentioned, they can register for next summer's dates. And honestly, I am open 24/7 via email, text, or phone call. And my number is on the website. And people have called me, and I have, saved them a spot before the dates are posted, and communicated with parents, especially if they're coming in from far distances. I've communicated with them about, future camps and future sessions. So everything is posted on the website, and there is an online camp portal where you create a family profile, and you're able to put your camper or campers in the sessions that work for your days.
Say again what the website is.
Yeah. The website is fantasyfishingcamp.com.
Well, man, I wish you all the best of luck with it. And
thanks, Tom. I really appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Well, I'm interested in the camp. I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
So good luck with it.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
All right, Parker. Thank you, man.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk to you later.
Okay. See ya. Thank you.